Welcome, first of all, everyone, to the first Riks Europe event. And let's get started. February 24th, 2022. It's really one of the days that you ask yourself, what was I doing when I heard the terrible news? Because the unthinkable became actual reality. We saw war returning to our soil. And Ukraine, known for its beautiful culture and history, became a battlefield. And the toll has been immense. Families are torn apart, lives were lost, and cities are in ruins. But that's not the only war that Ukraine is actually facing right now, besides the foreign aggression. It is fighting a second, but more silent war, which is corruption. And this war has hollowed out its institutions and its democratic progress for decades. While we acknowledge the gravity of the first war, it is important that both battles that Ukraine is facing right now are both as essential. Now, Ukraine has shown to be very resilient and courageous. President Zelensky, 2 weeks ago, actually reshuffled his administration, and though it can be seen as a political maneuver, some argue, it can also be shown as a goodwill to still combat the fight against corruption, even on the highest level of the government. It shows, not just to the people of Ukraine, but also to the international community, that Ukraine is dedicated to uphold integrity, even amidst a time of war. One of the most glaring symptom of this corruption is the rise of the illicit cigarette trade, and it has spiraled out of control in the past couple of years. In 2023, illegal cigarettes made out of 25.7% of the Ukrainian cigarette market. 25.7%. That is an enormous number if you keep in mind that this number was just 2% back in 2017. So what was once relatively a small issue has now grown into a full-blown crisis. And it's spilling over also to the European Union because we are losing billions in tax revenue, and the ones that are benefiting from it are the criminal organizations. It is important to note that this issue is not just about money, it's not just about the tax that we're missing, it's about the fact that organized crime is being fooled and they operate across borders. They stabilize Ukraine and also Europe. These criminal organizations, they exploit weak governance and often benefit from corporations of insiders within Ukraine's own system. This isn't an economic issue. It is a security issue that threatens Ukraine and the EU. Now, you might wonder, why does it even matter? It is because beyond the immediate financial impact, the loss of revenue from the illegal tobacco market, it could be vital for Ukraine's defense. In 2022 alone, Ukraine missed out on 20.5 billion hryvnia in tax revenue on the illicit trade cigarettes. 20.5 billion hryvnia. That is a staggering number, and for those who don't know how much it is in euros, because I didn't know, it is 512 million euros. This is money that can be used for a country in times of war to strengthen the military, to rebuild its infrastructure, or to stabilize its fragile economy. And more critically, Ukraine's ambition to join the European Union is directly tied to its ability to fight corruption. The Copenhagen criteria, which lay out the conditions for EU membership, require Ukraine to establish a strong, transparent institution that uphold the rule of law. And as long as these illegal networks thrive on corruption remains entrenched, Ukraine's path to EU membership will remain burdened with challenges. The illegal cigarette trade is just a symptom of a much larger problem, and that is the one of the systematic corruption. And Ukraine is in a very critical moment. While it's bravely fighting the Russian aggression, it must also confront the internal forces that threaten its future. The stakes at this point couldn't be higher. It is not a question about Ukraine's survival. It's about proving that Ukraine can be a reliable and trustworthy partner to the international community, one that upholds democratic values and the rule of law. Over the past months, we have seen our Ukrainian brothers and sisters showing strength, resilience, bravery, and there is no question and no doubt that they are going to be a valuable ally to the European Union. But before doing so, we need to have painful and critical conversations. We shouldn't shy away from asking those critical questions, because only in doing so we can ensure a future that is based on integrity, transparency, and reliability. Now, I'm very proud to present you our panel. And I'm going to start with Galina Yanchenko. She's an anti-corruption activist and a politician who began her career in 2008 in the council of the city of Kiev. In 2019, she was elected as an member of parliament, and she was the deputy head of the investment of the Council of Ukraine. And currently, she is in charge of Ukraine's investment policies and protecting investors' rights. Then I'm very proud to introduce our second panelist, Robert Vatten. He's the founder and CEO of GlobeSat. It's one of the most influential think tanks in Central and Eastern Europe. And under Robert's leadership, GlobeSat has shaped high-level discussions in global security, democracy, and transatlantic corporations. Now, Galina is going to give us an introduction, and we're going to have some questions. But more important, we really want to have a conversation with you, the audience. So please pay attention, and at the end, we hope to hear some questions from you. Galina, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, it's a big pleasure to be here and to actually share some important insights from Ukraine on our way to European integration. Moreover, I believe I will be able to break some myths which were formed around Ukraine for the past 15 years, and there was a ground behind those myths, because actually, indeed, 15 years ago, when somehow a pro-Russian president was elected in Ukraine, his name was Viktor Yanukovych, and he was the guy who actually decided to change the choice of the society and to turn Ukraine from European integration to Russian integration. It turned out that society was so shocked that the revolution, so-called European Maidan or European Revolution, later called as Revolution of Dignity, have started. And one of the outcomes of this revolution of dignity is that we actually realized, after Yanukovych became a runaway president, we realized the scale of corruption that he created. And for us, it was in 2014, for us, for the society, it was such a trauma that since then, a lot of efforts were actually put in fighting corruption, and there were a lot of talks. Sometimes I believe more talks than actually the real problem. But I believe that we will be able to touch these issues later on in the questions, and now I actually want to share with you some of the thoughts of European integration of Ukraine and our efforts. A month ago we marked 900 days of unprovoked Russian war of aggression. And I should say that we consider this heroic resistance of Ukraine and despite not as a fight for the physical land or for specific territories, but a fight of civilizational fight. We are fighting for our values, such as right to life, freedom, respect for dignity, freedom of thoughts, freedom of movement. After all, the freedom of independently choose our foreign policy vector, which Russia tries to actually take away from us. But I know that they will fail, and I will tell you why. On the 5th day after full-scale invasion, just think about full-scale invasion, nightmare going on, missiles are flying over the capital city, and on the 5th day after the full-scale invasion, Ukraine Ukraine is submitting application for the candidate status of EU. There is such a big political will, there was and there is such a big political will to continue European integration no matter what is going on. It's like, in a movie, everything is ruining, burning, but we are submitting the application to receive EU candidacy. It was in the end of February of 2022. No other countries was fighting for the European identity as Ukraine has, and very few countries have done so under such extreme conditions. As a result, in June of 2022, we did receive the candidacy status along with 7 recommendations. There was a recommendation to revise our policy related media, to revise our policies and legislations about minority, and the rest 5 policies were about economics and rule of law. So basically the topic that we are discussing today. We had very ambitious plan. We wanted to fulfill those 7 recommendations within half of the year or a year to move on to the second milestone, to start negotiations. And as a high-rank official, I am a political insider. I participate in a number of meetings with president, where we are discussing the agenda for the parliament, for the country, where we are discussing like our diplomacy priorities. And I should tell you that in 2022, once again, full-scale invasion, horrible situation is going on in the country. But for the president back to that time, and it is still true, there were only 2 main priorities: to win the war and to speed up EU integration of Ukraine. So each and every meeting that I participated in on behalf of the parliament was starting with the president's question: how are we going, what is going on with the 7 recommendations? When we will fulfill them, and we will be able to actually start the new milestone. And each and every meeting was ended with the same question. So let's sum up. What will you do this week to speed up the implementation of the 7 recommendations? Moreover, I should tell you that we had to pass not only a lot of legislation changes, but also to revise some rules and regulations. And our government was working hard, despite, once again, the circumstances in the country. And so I should actually recall and remind you the circumstances. In October of 2022, Russia has started intensive shelling of electricity and energy infrastructure of Ukraine. Our energy infrastructure guys could not repair the damaged network as quickly as Russia was shelling it. There were frequent blackouts all over the country, including the governmental area and neighborhood. There were a lot of other issues, but despite this fact, both parliament and government was working hard because the president was asking us on a weekly basis, so how are the 7 recommendations going on? And I should tell you that because there was such a big priority for the whole country and a very important sign for the society, yes, that we are fighting. We are going through a hard time, but we know why. We know what we are where we are moving. What are we fighting for? We are fighting for our European future. We are fighting for our freedom. So, in order to make sure that we speed up the next milestone, which is the start of negotiation, Ukraine, probably the first country in Europe, decided to actually make a self-screen before the official screen organized by European Commission. And that was on the background of blackouts and shelling and stuff like that. More than 80 state bodies, government institutions, international projects, and NGO participated in the self-screening. More than 80 organizations. They reviewed Ukrainian legislation to assess its compliance with EU law. The work was tremendous. They assessed 28,000 of EU legal acts. Can you imagine the amount of work? As a result of the self-screening at that stage, 2,700 EU legal acts required full or partial implementation in Ukraine, while 1,600 EU acts were fully implemented in Ukrainian law. And over 23,000 of EU acts, according to the preliminary assessment, did not need implementation during the negotiation process. As a result, in June 2023, so basically a year ago, Ukraine officially began the negotiation process to gain full EU membership. Does it mean that we are all good? No, of course not. We still have to do a lot of work, and we still do have problems to solve. I should tell you that one of the issues that is currently a big deal in the parliament and that we are discussing is, for example, the reform of the customs. We believe that we do have problems there, but the good thing is that we clearly know how to solve at least 70 or 80% of these issues, and actually to decrease the amount of illegal trade or illegal, contraband. And it's very easy. And a good news about that is that European Union can help us with that. Moreover, without European Union, we won't be able to do it. Because the issue how to actually solve a lot of issues, the tool how to solve a lot of issues is the trading of the data. So if we see what kind of goods were declared in European Union while they are exiting European Union, and we can check what is being declared on Ukrainian customs. 70% of corruption-related risks will be out, because currently a lot of documents is being faked in between. So basically people are exporting some goods, and they declare on Ukrainian custom different amount or different types of products, and they don't pay all the customs, all the taxes that they should pay. Now the bad news. The bad news is, for some reason, Ukraine was appealing to European Union to actually do this data trading, but European Union currently does not want to do that. There are some issues that, what will happen with our data? But seriously, Ukraine is the most data and digital advanced country in Europe. We have documents of all our citizens in our mobile phone. We have services from the state that we can generate ourselves. So we are the country who knows how to work with data, how to protect data and stuff like that. And that's why I believe that this argument is not relevant. So this is the paradox. We want to fight corruption risks on custom, and it depends on EU. But the paradox is that EU is not helping us in this particular issue. Another paradox is that Ukraine does have this data trading agreement even with China, but don't have the data trading agreement with EU. So this is something actually to ask some EU politicians, and if we have some civil society representatives or media, please do ask them, help Ukraine to fight our issues. It's not an only problem. We also have another thing that is very now being discussed in Ukrainian parliament when we are discussing our budget for the next year, and we are discussing the need to raise the taxes for various sectors of economic. Some parliamentaries, including myself, raised an issue of the shadow market, because if we can actually collect more money and make sure that people pay the taxes that they're supposed to pay, we don't need to actually raise the tax. Sorry. We will not be forced to actually raise the taxation so high. So this shadow market is an issue, especially in the sectors where there are excise duties. Because in Ukraine, excise is quite high, and quite often the excise is a couple times bigger than the cost of the product. And that's what makes these excise-related sectors very attractive, if we can say so, to organized crimes or people who want to avoid taxes and excise. I should say that we in Ukraine are lucky and blessed in this regard, because we are not alone in this fight, and we receive a lot of assistance and support from so-called like white businesses, those who obey all the legislation and pay all the taxes and excise. We have support from this from these businesses. We have support from these associations. They are cooperating. They are providing data. They come with solutions, and that's what makes the whole process much easier for us, for people who are actually very in favor of reforms and who are ready to move. So to be honest, I really encourage to move forward in the same direction. To sum up, I would like to say that perhaps subjectively, that no other country has been moving toward Europe, or more preciously, has been returning to its European home at such high cost as Ukraine did. And therefore, it's very important that we are not alone in this process, and that we receive assistance and we have understanding, and that our EU friends help us to actually speed up these processes and finally make the goal or a dream of all Ukrainians come true. And this is a dream for peace, and this is a dream to actually become a full member of European family, I would say, not even European Union. For us, it's more. It's about values, it's about emotions, it's about trust, and about acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Irina, first of all, I want to thank you for your beautiful first remarks, and also for being here, because you told me in the beginning that sometimes it even take up to 20 hours to get across the border, and then you have to travel to a place where you can take a plane. So thank you for your effort, and also more importantly for the sacrifices that you're making for your own country, that you're still being in Kiev, having those meetings with actually taking a lot of risk even for your own life, but for the greater good. To start this conversation, I want to talk about Zelensky and the new administration, because some people and key actors left. Now there are some new ministers, and for some people it did raise some questions. Can you tell more about the new administration of Zelensky? How should we view it? And who is the new protagonist against corruption?
Well, I should tell you that it's a big challenge to take responsibility for the country in the circumstances that we are. Full-scale invasion, about 5 to 7 million refugees in Europe, Ukrainian refugees in Europe, about 8 million of internally displaced people within the countries, constant shelling on energy and electricity infrastructure. Pretty much on a daily basis, we wake up in the morning and we read news about, some families being murdered in residential buildings by Russian missile or Iranian drone that Iran provides to Russia, actually killed, civilians. So it's actually a big responsibility, and it's a responsibility for government, but also a responsibility for parliament. I'm not even talking about President Zelensky. And that's why it's for quite some time already. We didn't have ministers in some of the ministries. They were acting ministers, and it was actually time to find the people who can fulfill this mission and fulfill this position on the permanent basis. And that's why we had a lot of changes in the positions.
And Mr. Mas, you are our security expert. Of course, we already discussed about the challenges Ukraine is facing, the war against the aggression of Russia, then corruption. But what other issues does Ukraine deal with now that can block its road to EU membership?
Thank you very much. First of all, do you hear me? Okay. Yes. Good. Hi. Thank you very much for your question, also for your introductory speech. Let me tell you first of all that I'm a big supporter of Ukraine because the fight you're fighting is not only for your future, it is for our future. And this is not a cliche, this is a fact, because when the war started and Russia has attacked Ukraine, it was not only an attack on a sovereign country, but it was an attack, it was a frontal attack on the very basic principles of international order and European peace. And if we compromise in this, if we let Ukraine just go, or we compromise in this, then we will diminish the trust in our institutions. So we are fighting this together, and unfortunately you are paying too high price for your European future. So we have to help you, and you have to help us to help you. So that's first what I wanted to say. And the GlobSec is one of the first organizations which opened office after the start of the war in Ukraine, in Kiev. So the war started in February, and my first trip was in May to Kiev, when nobody was traveling there. Basically nobody. There was a first trip of prime ministers of Poland, Czech Republic, and I believe Slovenia. And right after, a few weeks after, I decided that I will lead the delegation of European parliamentarians to Kiev. And I was very positively surprised by the resolution of your people to fight. And what I've seen is that a new nation was born. Because what Vladimir Putin has caused is that he united Ukraine. He united many groups who were not able to speak with each other, who were fighting on many issues. But he united you for one thing. First to win, and second to get to Europe. And you have been showing that where is your place, and your place is with us. And to your question, what Ukraine is dealing with, and what are the other things that it needs to deal with? Of course, there are so many balls in the air that you need to juggle with, and it's so difficult. But let me mention a few of them. Of course, war is one, but then the Russian rockets are destroying your basic infrastructure, whether it's the energy infrastructure, schools, hospitals, etc. This will need reconstruction, of course. But reconstruction cannot be done without a clear security guarantees. If you don't have security guarantees, who will come and invest into your country? And who will come up with the money to reconstruct if you don't have the real belief that those investments will be safe? So another challenge is that how do you keep the support of the West that has been really tremendous so far, not only in the military means, but also in the means of economic support. How do you keep this support of the West, but also how do you keep the motivation of your people to fight further? And I think for that, reforms are absolutely crucial. Of course, the war has also created shadow economy, because you don't have enough goods and people try to find cheap alternatives. So, and that there goes also the illicit trade. So in a war, normally you increase the shadow economy. But if you want to come to Europe, you need to fight the shadow economy. You have to be able to decrease the shadow economy to collect more money, but also to be able to show to the Western supporters that the money we are investing is well invested. Of course, with that comes also the issue of corruption. Ukraine has been doing good things, and I think in the last 2 years you've done things that were unimaginable before. So the level of the resolution to get to Europe is creating an opportunity really to push through reforms that would be in a normal peacetime unimaginable. Yeah. I remember when Slovakia was joining NATO and EU, and if we wanted to join, that was the big argument for everybody, all of the political parties, to unite and push through the necessary reforms so we can go to Europe. I think the same reforms now, when we are members of the European Parliament, would not be possible, or that would be politically, internally much more difficult. So you have a very unique opportunity now as well, as you are a candidate to EU, to do the necessary reforms that otherwise will be difficult on the political scene to push through. And this is absolutely important to keep the Western support for you. I'm saying that the war that we are seeing in Ukraine is just the tip of the iceberg, because Russia is fighting this war against Europe in many front lines. We see the physical front line in Ukraine, but there is another front line. It's hybrid war and disinformation. They are using disinformation channels in Europe, in Ukraine, in other countries to decrease our ability to protect ourselves. And guess what? They are using the criminal groups that are getting illegal money and that are profiting on shadow economy. They're using these groups to divert and to decrease the trust and create cracks. So I would say that fighting shadow economy and fighting illicit trade is not only an issue of getting more taxes. It's about national security, because if you have shadow economy and illicit trade, you have a big group of criminals who are profiting on a weak state. You need to strengthen the state in order to be able not only to get to Europe, but also to strengthen your own security. So of course there are many other challenges that you're dealing with, but when I talked a little bit about reconstruction and investment, we will not be able to mobilize private capital without doing reforms, fighting corruption, and fighting the shadow economy. I think these are very important basic things.
You mentioned that security is crucial in the fight against the illicit market. Can you also talk more about what the costs are for security and economic costs that comes with the illicit market, not just for Ukraine, but also for the rest of Europe?
Globsec has done several projects on looking at how illicit trade is feeding criminal groups across Europe. Several years ago, we've done a big study where we have studied the relationship between the terrorists and criminal groups, and this was one of the best reports Europe-wide on this. And we are seeing how much the base in these criminal groups are connected to activities that are decreasing the security of the government. So fighting illicit trade, as I said, is not an economic issue only. It's not an economic, it's a national security issue. And the cost, of course, is high. So it's economic, it's national security, but also it's the trust of investors, and it's the credibility of the country. So I think that the costs you can see in almost every dimension, because to keep the support of the West, you need to be able to do things at home. As I'm saying, in order to win in Ukraine, we have to win the support at home. But to win the support at home, we need to show that Ukraine is doing also the right things at home, that you are doing But you really need this help from all of us.
And Ms. Medina, your government has been doing quite a lot against the shadow market, the trade of illicit cigarettes. What more can be done? Is it enough what you've done so far?
Well, I should say you that there are some other difficulties that we face and which complicates the fight with illicit trade. Maybe it's not obvious here in Brussels, where you are not, like used to the shelling, and sometimes it's difficult to imagine what does the full-scale invasion and a full-scale war looks like. But I should tell you that currently we have about 1.2 million people on the front line serving in army. 1.2. We are spending, while NATO standards is to spend 2% of the state budget for defense and security, and many NATO countries are not meeting this standard of 2% of the budget. Ukraine spends 57% of our budget on defense and security. 1.2 million are defenders on the front line. A lot of those defenders, they actually they came from various law enforcement agencies. Our National Guard, who used to actually focus on internal issues like safety in cities and stuff like that, they turned into a permanent army unit. A lot of policemen who have some understanding how to actually, use a weapon and how to stop some bad guys, let's call them that way, they also joined the army. So the resources, the law enforcement resources that we have, they are also exhausted to some extent, because Russia exhausts our resources, and it's very important to understand these realities that we are going through. But despite this fact, I should tell you that for the past year, I believe that we made a big progress. You mentioned 25.7% of shadow market in excise-related sectors. This is slightly outdated data, because it's data from October 2023, so basically a year ago. There is a recent research of the organization who is doing the screening on the quarterly basis, and they say that in September the shadow market decreased by 10% within a year in a country which is in a war. So basically it decreased twice as much, and now it's about 14% in September 2022. It's still a lot. It still means that we have to continue this work, but we are on a super right way, I should say. And the final note in this regard, I should tell you that I believe that Ukrainian policies and Ukrainian reforms toward decreasing corruption risk is a unique and a very professional way. There was, in the previous 5 years political cycle, there was an attempt to actually copy-paste foreign experience. It gave some results, but it was not super efficient, because copy-paste never works. You have different society, you have different problems, you have different historical, cultural background. So you should always adopt foreign experience and see what can work better for you. Personally I like, my background is social science, so I really like to invent, some new social approaches. And in 2019, when I was drafting part of pre-election agenda of President Zelensky, and I was in charge of actually anti-corruption part of the agenda, I suggested to learn from private sector. Because Ukrainian private sector is very flexible, it's very client-oriented, and it's very efficient, I should say. So we learned from private sector, and we also learned, and we were inspired by Estonian experience. Estonia went very digital. But Ukrainian private sector was also by that time very digital. For example, our banking system was amazing. You could open bank account, you could close bank account, you could wire money, you could pay taxes, you could buy any kind of tickets via your phone without leaving your room, yeah, basically. And it was truth in Ukraine already 10 years ago. So we learned and we were inspired by that experience, and we decided to create a mobile application where citizens can receive anything that they need from the state with their mobile phone without interaction with civil servants. And it mitigated a lot of risk of corruption, but also it improved the quality of life. So quite often Ukrainians in Europe, refugees especially, they don't understand why it takes so long, sometimes weeks, to receive a service from state bodies. So I believe that we, Ukraine, we can be not only, like a smaller brother who is, asking, tell us what to do and we will do everything, but we can be an equal partner who also have some interesting experience and some good approaches. I believe that once again, we raised an issue about customs, and data exchange is also a part of digitalization, which helps to identify where are the unmatched in what is declared. So I believe Ukraine also has something to share with Europe, and some experience and some know-how or tools how to mitigate the risk of corruption.
We talked, of course, now about the exchange of data, but we also have to talk about funding. Ukraine has received billions in aid from the EU, but also the private sector is stepping up. We have separate big corporations like PMI, for example, that are putting their trust and their goodwill in still investing in Ukraine regardless of the risk that they're taking with it. But however, corruption is blocking some of those investments. So, Mr. Vance, can you give some examples of how corruption is preventing foreign investment to support Ukraine's recovery efforts?
As I mentioned, there are absolutely necessary to fight corruption, because otherwise, what do you need for an investment to come to a country? You need the security. You need the security guarantees. So with whomever you're speaking about investment into Ukraine, they say until we will have a clear security guarantees, it won't be possible. So that's why, very rightly, you are aiming at integrating to EU and NATO as well, because membership in NATO is one of the highest security guarantees. So security guarantee. But then the second is that there needs to be a trust in the institutions, that if I invest my money, I know in what legal framework I'm operating, and I have to, and those investors need to be able to see that legal framework works not only on paper, but also in reality. And corruption, of course, is the first which diminishes this trust. So in that case, you are decreasing the foreign investments, etc. So as I said, the integration, everybody has problems with corruption, and I don't want to say here that Ukraine is absolutely exceptional. But you have an opportunity to find it right now with your EU accession and membership. And when it comes to also illicit trade, there are several things that can be done. Of course, there is not a silver bullet, never. But I think we can see a trend also in Europe. Stupid policies are increasing illicit trade, and smart policies are decreasing it. You can have the best law enforcement. You will never be able to fight illicit trade if your policies are stupid. So, for example, we see based on the KPMG report here is that in some countries the highest illicit consumption shares, for example, was in France. And when we see they increased drastically from one year to another the taxes, which means that the consumers went into the shadow economy. So you can have the best law enforcement unless you address that policies that are allowing people to be in the normal economy and not shadow economy. And this is not only on cigarettes, this is on any products. But when it comes to a combination of other things, of course, strengthening border control, leveraging technology, you mentioned digitalization. Ukraine has made a tremendous step in digitalization. I was amazed what Ukraine has been able to do in digitalizing your services. The more it gets digital, the less room is there for manipulating. The more you make the more you digitalize all the services of the countries, including tax collection, including, for example, building construction, everything else, the less room is there for the local political influences to grasp it. So digitalization and leverage technology, very important. Of course, improve legal framework that has to go hand in hand with the European legal framework, enhance law enforcement, of course, and address corruption and foster international cooperation, I would say. International cooperation, absolutely important, because you can never do it only on the national level. Maybe a few things from me.
Thank you so much.